Well, today also marks 1 year to the day since President Obama was sworn in for his second term. And in that time, the latest numbers from the Real Clear Politics average of polls show his approval ratings have been on a steady downward slide. His disapproval on a steady climb for a total swing of 20 points in the last 12 months. Look at that. The red is the disapproval and the white is the approval. And you can see they're going in the wrong direction for the president currently. Our chief White House correspondent, Ed Henry, is live in the snow at the White House. Ed?
Megan, dedicated to you and your viewers. The bottom line is those poll numbers have come down because I spoke to Republican Senator Rob Portman today, and he basically said it's because of health care. The president's signature domestic achievement has broken promises on that issue that have really brought those numbers down in the last couple of months. The pushback from the White House tonight, I spoke to one of the president's senior advisors a short time ago who said, look, they believe they're going to turn the corner on health care, that the enrollment numbers are coming up, that more and more young people will start signing up in the months ahead. They're not there yet, obviously. That is their hope. The problem for the president is 1 year ago today at that inaugural address that you mentioned, he spoke a lot about a very aggressive, progressive agenda, not just on health care, but on a grand bargain budget deal, on climate change, on immigration reform. And he basically has gotten no major victories on those issues, in part because he's been pinned down on implementing health care. And that's why when I spoke to Democrat Joe Trippi today, he said this is why the State of the Union address is so critical next week. The president has one final chance, perhaps, to grab the nation's attention, get his agenda front and center on immigration and other issues before he becomes a lame duck, Megan.
Ed, thank you. Well, as Ed mentioned, 1 week from tonight, we will be covering the State of the Union address. And while President Obama promised last year to work with lawmakers on a number of issues, he is sounding a different sort of message in recent days.
Where Congress isn't acting, I'll act on my own.
We are not just going to be waiting for legislation in order to make sure that we're providing Americans the kind of help that they need. One of the things that I'm going to be talking to my cabinet about is how do we use all the tools available to us, not just legislation. I've got a pen and I've got a phone, and I can use that pen to sign executive orders and take executive actions and administrative actions that move the ball forward.
In the meantime, I'm directing my administration to move forward where we can on our own. But I'm also going to act on my own if Congress is deadlocked. I've got a pen to take executive action.
Britt Hume is our Fox News senior political analyst. So he's got a pen, Britt. He's got a pen and a phone.
Well, maybe. Well, he does have a pen and a phone, and the most potent use of the pen in the hands of the chief executive is the veto. But he doesn't have to worry about vetoing much of anything because any legislation that he might dislike that would emanate out of the House of Representatives won't get through the Senate. Right. So he's rarely had to worry about vetoing anything. And as for what he can do with the pen to sign executive orders, there's some things he can do. They're not very big, or he already would have done them. That's the issue here. Now, he does have a telephone, and he can call people up and stage events at the White House and rally his base, and you should never underestimate his ability to do that. I've never seen a president as good at rallying his base as this president. Best I've ever seen. But that only goes so far.
There he is on his phone.
There you go. Sure. I mean, all presidents do that, and it's not to be, I don't mean to belittle it, but it just can only go so far.
What does it mean? I mean, what does it tell you that he's now at the point of, I've got a pen and a phone, and I'm going to act on my own?
Well, it's about all he's got left when you think about it. Look, he's basically been politically, in terms of legislation and major initiatives, frozen since the Republicans got control of the House in 2010. And the Republicans who came in, not to mention those who are already there, are not at all sympathetic to his agenda. And so in order for him to get anything through the Congress that he wants, he has to make the kind of concessions he has so far been unwilling to make. For example, he would like to see an increase, a continuation of these unemployment benefits that have been on an emergency basis for some time. He could get that, but he would have to pay for it. That is to say, he would have to find savings in other parts of the budget. He's unwilling to do that, and the result is the kind of stalemate that you heard him mention. He can't really get anything done because he's not willing to give up enough, for better or for worse, to do it. And, that's the kind of horse trading you kind of have to do if you want to get anything done. Otherwise, you're stuck with the pen and the telephone, and there are real limits to that.
They are beautiful pens. We've seen them whenever he signs bills into law. He has tried to do certain things because he believes that there's an obstructionist Congress. And in his defense, they say that, this Congress is the least productive ever, and the one before that, last year, that was just as unproductive. So he says he's got to do something. And so if he did things like appoint guys to the NLRB and gals, without congressional approval on what he said were recesses, and now the courts have said, well, no, they weren't, and so on. Do you see this next, the remainder of his presidency as being mired in court proceedings, as we've seen in the past year?
Well, I think there'll be some more of this. I mean, as you pointed out, that those NLRB appointments and a bunch of others that he made and a bunch of other things that were done during that Senate appointments were made during that Senate supposed recess, which I think the Supreme Court is going to find was not a recess at all, because the Senate is the body that gets to decide when it's in recess. That's all going to be struck down. And when those appointments are struck down, all kinds of actions that were taken by those appointees or with those appointees' participation will fall with them. So this is an example of the kind of limits you find when you're using your pen to try to order things or to get things done. There's one thing he can do, though, Megyn, it's worth noting, and that is it appears he's going to be able to make some appointments to the U.S. Court of Appeals here in Washington, because the Senate has decided that they're not going to permit any further filibusters on such nominees. And though that's a very important court when it comes to regulations. That court has jurisdiction over a number of regulatory agencies.
All right.
And it will mean that he will have a better chance of having regulations that he signs with his pen or that are signed in the agencies that he presides over to stand if he can fill out that court in the way that he wants.
Just want to say for the record, I too have a pen and a phone. See you, Britt.
Well, all right,
Gotta
Megyn.
go.
All right.